Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this in-depth monthly ag forecast for Ag Carolina and Ag South Farm Credit. All right, this is what I've got loaded up for you today. After covering some of the recent very wild weather we've had, including severe weather, snow, ice, major swings in temperature, I'm going to give you my near-term forecast. In other words, what does it look like through the front half of this new month of March that's coming up? Then I'm going to talk about the rest of it into spring and into summer. And one of the things I want to cover here is some important kind of information I'm gathering from some of my friends and colleagues that storm chase. This is a hobby I used to have and very much enjoyed, but some of the stuff that they're thinking about is going to be critical to this upcoming summer pattern. When we get to this point in my slides, this is all long-range weather information. So from 3 different major models, we're going to look at La Nina, their forecast by month, getting all the way out there to summer, and I'm going to finish with South America. So I've got you loaded with content today, but I'm going to be honest with you. I really wish I could have talked to you every day in the last month, just given how wild the weather is. And that brings us back to the map you've been staring at. It's the last 30 days of total accumulated precipitation. We've had extremely wet weather through the Mid-South, getting into Tennessee and Kentucky. In fact, about 10, 15 days ago, we saw so much rain coming through parts of Kentucky that the state was hitting 8 to 12 inches as an average. This got into Virginia. This got into northern parts of North Carolina. In fact, I'd like to zoom in if you don't mind here. Let's go just into the southeast so we can see it a little bit closer here. Just take a look at some of these precipitation totals. Now, what's been interesting about this pattern is how it's not been able to really drag its heaviest rainfall into parts of Georgia, coastal South Carolina through mid-South Carolina here, and then this particular part of North Carolina. We've had a lot of high pressure at times that's prevented that. But when the weather systems do get through, they've come through with quite a punch overall. I'm thinking about the fact that so far in 2025, we've had a tremendous amount of severe weather that's been in the southeast. Now listen, I mentioned something about my colleagues at Storm Chase, and I'm just going to say it now, but I'm going to point it out again later. You know, normally when they start having their discussions about where they're going to set up what they call their chasecations, these are folks that take vacation to go chase storms. They're almost always talking about Nebraska, Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, parts of Arkansas, Missouri, with an epicenter somewhere right in through here. We call that the plains, right? They're coming out here to chase these storms. Right now, most of their discussion is in this area. And they're thinking about not only parts of what we call Dixie Alley, the lower Mississippi Valley, the Mid-South and the Southeast, but more of the Ohio River Valley as well. And that's going to be very telling as to where we think this upcoming spring pattern is going to be most aggressive. And I'm going to tell you this, one year that they're looking a lot at is 2011. Now, that was an incredibly severe weather season for this particular part of the country. We cannot ignore that that's one of the years they're thinking about. Now, the map I've been drawing on is just showing you where we've had the severe weather reports so far this year. This isn't the forecast. This is where we've already been. And you can see that we've had numerous severe wind reports that have come through parts of Georgia, North and South Carolina. We've already had 61 reports of tornadoes. In fact, just one yesterday. This is crazy in parts of South Dakota. So we just need to have this ongoing discussion. Look at this March and April forecast to see where things are headed. But I wanted you to hear that from me right away at the very beginning of this. Now, if we look at the cold side of things, where did this winter take us? We've actually had snow in all 50 states. And of course, you can't see Hawaii in this or Alaska, but we get snow at the top of the Big Island of Hawaii all the time. And of course, we have winter snows in Alaska, but every single state has had snow so far this winter. If you just kind of look at some of these totals, we've got significant portions of the Carolinas into Georgia that have seen over 6 inches of snow. Now, most of that was from that big event that happened back in early January. But it's important just to kind of get a good look at what this map shows. Now, I'm going to make a quick change to it for you real quick. I'm going to take this over to a departure, okay? Departure, or depart, I think is what I call it. There you go. And while we're sitting close to our average or even above that, there's a big section here of the upper Midwest that does not have snow on the ground. And I want you to think about that because you grow crops that compete with the Midwest. There's no doubt about it. And while we've seen multiple intrusions of cold air, the air that's been coming into the northern plains has been very cold and very dry. So some of the snow that's gotten into this area has not had much liquid in it. I want you to think about that as I show you these next few maps. But we will remember this winter, especially since the start of the new year, as one of our coldest on record, probably a top 20 coldest start to a new year, going through January into February. And since then, we've flipped this all around. So if you just go back to last week where we were looking at temperatures in the middle part of the country that were down to like minus 15 to 20, and we had snow on the ground through parts of North Carolina, South Carolina, and into Virginia. In fact, a huge snowfall event last week riding through here. We've now taken this snow and it's gone. I mean, we're just melting this away. There's still a little bit here as of last night, but we've just melted it away with such mild conditions. Now, what's interesting about this is that where we have our frost line in the ground is such that we melted that snow in the upper Midwest, and it's not getting into the profile. Now, why I'm telling you this is because as I get into this summer forecast, I want you to know that one of my greatest areas of concern is actually the Midwest, upper Midwest, and northern plains. Because right now our 100 centimeter soil percentile, so think of it as a rank, still shows very, very dry soils, basically because of last fall's drought not being corrected this winter. Why? It was too cold and dry. But we cannot ignore the fact that throughout Alabama, Georgia, North and South Carolina, we've still got very dry soils in place despite some of the recent precipitation. So let's kind of stitch this whole narrative together here at the very beginning as we recount where we've been by looking at, since December 1, what our precipitation ranks are. Extremely wet through here, but drier overall through a lot of the Ag Carolina and Ag South territory. And we're concerned about what that may look like. But I'm going to be honest with you. Why I'm not going to be talking much about spring and summer drought in this area and much more focusing on what's going on in the Sun Belt here down in the Southwest is that this is an area that we're concerned about spreading dryness throughout the plains going forward. And here's the big idea. Usually, when we're talking about major drought episodes that could form in the central U.S., we're not talking about them in the southeast. So that's the narrative I'm trying to craft here as I go into this longer range forecast. Okay, let's pick up on the drought monitor. This is the way it currently looks. We've got 70% of the lower 48 in some form of drought. That includes this first shade of yellow, which just means abnormally dry. But if you look over the last 12 weeks, the drought has gotten worse here, worse in pockets of the Midwest, and then this sliver right in through here, where in the last 12 weeks, there's been a one-class degradation overall in the drought. Okay, that's my setup. That just tells you the chaos of January and February with our wildly fluctuating temperatures, the ice event we saw, the snow events that we've seen, and what it did overall to our moisture profile. Where we are now this morning, as I'm watching the sunrise, is we've got clear skies for the most part. We've got a little bit of high cloud that's still lingering here. We have a low that's just curling its way off the southeast coast. But other than that, we're not going to be talking about too much in terms of weather events over the coming days. But I need you to see something going on next week. And so we got to dig into some of the overall pattern in the near term that needs to be discussed. So very mild. It's kind of crazy to say this, but parts of the Carolinas will be cooler than Nebraska and South Dakota right now. That's how mild things are in the central U.S. So here's today's high temperatures getting into tomorrow on Wednesday. Thursday, I mean, this very mild air coming in here. This is the color shading, in case you don't remember, is departure from normal. So we're much warmer than our averages here. Then we get into Friday, a little bit of a cool down this weekend, Friday. Then watch Sunday. There we go. Some cooler air. Could get a little bit of what we call a backdoor cold front sneak along the Appalachian Mountains here. That's Sunday into Monday. There's our cool down, like I mentioned, at the end of the week. But very mild overall. So what's different here? We've now got a much stronger piece of the jet stream coming across the United States. In fact, we have a jet extension. I'll go back to this previous map and just show you this. Let's see here. Earth, that's one of my favorite websites, earth.nullschool.net. Take a look at the Pacific. That's our jet stream level wind right now. And it's just leaving China, Japan, and coming across. And so the flow is generally like this. Whereas back in most of February, early February, we had flow coming in like that. So the jet was splitting, coming over the top, and then diving, which is what gave us, all that cold weather we talk so much about. Well, that's all shifted around, and now we're flooding more of North America with mild air. Day 5 through 10 continues to see that, and day 10 through 15 does as well. So working our way through the middle of this month, I do not have any sort of sustained, meaning 4, 5, 6 day shots of cold air that are coming back. But I want to caution you about something here. This jet extension that's happening across the Pacific, the one I just showed you a moment ago here, this is related to where something called the MJO is currently sitting. It's this band of tropical convection that lives along the equator. All right. That MJO seems to be in about a 5-week cycle. And what I want you to understand about that is as we get out there a bit farther, I do not think we are done in the southeast with another intrusion of cold air. It's not coming by mid-March. I think it's coming in later March, maybe early April. It will not be to the magnitude of what we saw in January and February. But I just want to let you know that there's still a lot of variability that will be happening in this temperature pattern going forward. Maybe another way to look at it, let's just come back here. I'm going to go to my website, agweather.com. I don't know, let's just go to Raleigh. If I just start typing in, there's Raleigh. Let's bring up the latest data I've got on it. If you notice, let's come down here and look at year-to-date temperatures. See what I'm talking about? We tend to spend, this is all of January, then a bump up in early February, a drop down here. There seems to be a bit of a cadence to this. And what I'm concerned about is right here, bringing back down some low temperatures again. Now, could we have a frost event later in the month of March and early April? I think that is possible. And I just want you to be aware of it. Is it set in stone? Do I really, really believe that this is going to happen? It only depends on if this cadence is maintained, and there's some evidence with the MJO movement that it could be. So while we see these mild conditions, in other words, that's going to take us way back up here for a little while through the middle of March, I just think we need to watch the end of March for the trip back down on this graphic looking at average temperatures. Now, I can go searching for evidence in this and sometimes not find it. Like one of our global models here is we just play week by week through March. Like this is the first week of March. Here's the second week of March. What are we looking at? That's the jet stream flow. It's going to go around these features. This model says, shoot, by the time you get to mid-March and beyond, these warmer colors you see here represent higher than normal heights. You're saying, well, okay, what does that mean? That means the atmosphere is warmer and therefore kind of thicker. In other words, it not thicker is the wrong word. It occupies a larger space, and therefore we tend to not see strong cold air intrusions with this. And I bring that up because if I flip this over to temperatures, it just look like a 1 week sliding window. Let's go back to now. So here's this week, week 2 into March, week 3 in March, week 4 in March. I mean, you're going, Eric, I don't see this risk of colder air you're talking about. I understand. But sometimes the models are not very good at seeing the potential pattern flips that, our intuition and study of historical weather can find. So is my confidence high that some point in late March we're going to get colder air dipping back in here? No, it's not. But there is reason to think that it could. So let's leave it at that and know that we'll be talking about this again very soon. But I want you to pay attention to those temperature fluctuations overall, okay? All right, next topic, precipitation. This is how things shake down early this morning on our all hazards map. We don't have a whole lot coming. Most of the action is in the northwest. We do have strong winds, but they're not for you. They're really going to be rolling through the northern tier of the country. I don't see a whole lot going on for us in the next week or so. There is a system we'll be talking about that comes out of the Rocky Mountains next Sunday, Monday. That's going to rip across the country. It's going to start to bring its severe weather here by Monday night, Tuesday, and that will try to get over to us, but that's still more than a week away, and we'll get to that in a few seconds. So as it stands early this morning, I showed you this on satellite earlier, there's the low curling its way off the coast through Wednesday into Thursday. There's a front that sneaks through, Kentucky, but does it bring rain? Maybe over the mountains here. That's about it by the time we get into Thursday. So we're going to be waiting on our next system, which is going to come over the Rocky Mountains this weekend and get to us midweek next week. So we can go through this relatively quickly. I've got the GFS on the right and the European on the model, two of our flagship global models here. Just watch the southeast. There's the little front I mentioned by Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, it goes on. Not a whole lot happening. Clippers going through the northeast. There's our cool down late in the week. That's with this big area of high pressure, but it's also setting up the flow into this system that's coming into, Colorado. I'm not sure how many of you are going to go to it, but I'll be at Commodity Classic this weekend, and we could be looking at a potential snow event in Denver, which is where Commodity Classic is, Sunday, Monday. So that could be fun, maybe even Tuesday. Now, by the time we get into Tuesday, see this? That is going to be the beginning of our risk later in the week for the Carolinas. So this is Tuesday into Wednesday. Now, the European model is faster. Okay, so this is by Wednesday, Tuesday night to Wednesday. It's got the system here. The GFS is just lingering, leaving this system over the Midwest. Regardless, I think there's a risk of strong to severe storms. When? next Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday, depending on the timing of this. We are not settled on the timing of this. The GFS doesn't bring it through until Thursday. See that? So there's a difference in about 1,000 miles on the position of where this front is going to be as we look out there late next week. So just understand that. But as the system comes through, I just want you to see this is a measure of instability in the atmosphere. That's Monday night into Tuesday morning. As you notice, as we get out there toward Wednesday, it's going to be taking this high instability air and bringing it through our region, which we need to consider for the risk of those strong to severe storms. We're going to call this midweek next week. The timing will change. If you want to stay on top of the timing, just go to my website, just agweather.com. It's partnerships like I have through Ag South and Ag Carolina that let me maintain this site. When you get here, just slide right down to this animation. It's this one right here. ECMWF forecast maps, click on it, and then you can just watch the timing of these systems all on your own. Okay, that's the one I trust the most. Okay, where was I in my cadence of slides? Here we go. I'm curious as to how much snow might be in the northern side of this, and I'm only bringing up a snow map for you because if you might go to Commodity Classic, I just want you to see what we're looking at over here in Colorado. Just something to think about. But we're going to stay away from the really cold temperatures bringing snow back toward us. All right, so that leaves us with total precip. We're going to look at two different animations here. Not a whole lot going on through this weekend. Right? Maybe a frontal passage that happens that we'll have to keep an eye on Thursday, right? We talked about that, but that's it. Okay, when's the next system? There it is. Sunday, look, I'm talking here. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, here we go. Wednesday. See that coming through? And that's when we have our chance for the strong to severe storms, Tuesday into Wednesday. Now, that's the European model timing. You're saying, well, how much is it looking at here? Well, let's just take a quick dive into the southeast and get an idea from the model on what it's projecting. Okay, there's our little frontal passage right there. That would, again, be Thursday. And then we're going to wait. There it is. That's next Wednesday into next Thursday. And you can see the model's attempting to put down some relatively locally heavier rainfall, but it's not as though it's currently being forecast to just hit some of our drier pockets. So if we stretch it out beyond 10 days and just say, well, what's the chance at getting another inch of total moisture over the next 10 days? We're at a 50 to 80% chance here, higher as you get back toward the Appalachian Mountains. But where it's dry, it's very dry here, and this whole corridor is staying very dry. And that's two spots that have been dry for a while. So we have to continue to consider those areas moving forward. So here's that trough. And what I notice is, that one's coming through there. It is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, is that the atmosphere seems to be keeping open with its Rossby waves. That's what we call these. And what I like about that is that tends to give us a better cadence on storm systems going forward through March. What I'll be watching for is for one of these deep waves to just establish itself over the southeast in late March. That could be the risk for the colder weather. But as it stands, getting out there to week 2, which is March 5th through March 11th, we just see the cadence of those systems coming through, and we overall have a wetter than average forecast for week 2. But just remember, this includes that system I just highlighted for you. That's midweek next week. All right? Okay, that's the near-term details. What I want to get back to is this. What about mid-March to mid-April? As I mentioned last time, this corridor has been highlighted repeatedly in the models for being wetter. I think you can expand this farther, including all of Ag South and all of Ag Carolina's territory. This is the area that we're most concerned about for the risk of severe weather. You're going, what is that thing you just drew? That's our symbol that we use to denote thunderstorm activity. What I want to know is, does it really pan out this way such that there is going to be drier and less severe weather in the southern plains in March into April, and more of it focused in the southeast? My storm-chasing colleagues say yes. If that is the case, this will put more drought pressure here than in the southeast as we go forward. Now, that same kind of idea is currently being forecast by our government. So this would be the NOAA forecast. This is the middle 2 weeks of March. You can see where they've got the drier risks and where they've got things looking wetter. You can even stretch this out and look at their 1 month forecast. Again, mild for the most part, understanding that late March we're going to watch out for some cold possibilities. I'm not settled on that, but look at where they have the drier. So we start to consider all of this, and we look for reasoning before I give you all of these long-range forecasts. And as we start to look out there, here's the first thing I want to talk about. The newest update, just released on February 20th, looking at the risk of drought developing, is this. This whole area increased in size with that color shading. Now, I know you're going, wait a minute, what about us down here in southern Georgia? I understand. This is an area that's been dry, but I don't necessarily fully agree that we're going to see drought develop here. That's okay. It's okay to disagree. I just think that there's a broader area over the east that's going to see more active weather with more risk in the plains. And you say, well, what's giving you that risk? Well, this is what's giving me that, or not, what's giving you that difference in risk? Well, we can look at a lot of different things. We'll start with La Nina. It's now center-based in the Pacific Ocean. A lot of warming that's happened here. And we've seen much of the Atlantic maintain warmth except for this region. Now, if we focus on that La Nina, I want to let you know something. That La Nina, take a look at this, has been fading quickly since late January. The ocean temperature is rising quite rapidly. And we have some historical precedents on what happens in the May to August timeframe following weak La Ninas. You see, there tends to be drier conditions here and wetter there. We also tend to not be hot. So that's one piece of the puzzle. Another piece of the puzzle is the newest forecasts from the National Weather Service. For March, April, May, they're going aggressively wet here, but they're not overly dry in this area. They're keeping the driest conditions here for March, April, May. This would be their April, May, June forecast. See how they don't have a strong anomaly for you here, but it's up the high plains. This is the May, June, July. They've even got stormy conditions, stormier than average for the Carolinas. How about June, July, August? See what they've got? Does that not match what I showed you a moment ago with this? Cooler, stormier. So there's some historical precedents based off of this fading La Nina that we need to pay attention to. Now remember, La Nina fades in its influence on our weather in our warm season. It's a cold season dominated feature, not a warm season. So we need to understand that some of these correlations aren't as strong as we may think they are. But let's at least look at the temperatures. Overall, March, April, May, they've got you mild. But I'm still hung up on this late March cool down. I can't ignore it. Then as we get into April, May, June, still mild. May, June, July, the greatest heat in the Great Basin. June, July, August, that's where they've got all the heat. Now this follows about a 70-year trend to having greater heat in the West versus the Midwest or the Southeast. And we're all questioning this. And the reason we're questioning it is because if this is where they've got the episode of greatest heat, how will that translate into moisture for the plains, Midwest, and into the Southeast? We're questioning it because this is following more of a pattern we saw in the year like 2021. And I'm not 100% sure that we're going to be into that particular setup. So to show you two other models, I'm going to go now to the NMME. Now I bring up all of these maps in total here. There's 11, right? These are the 8 models that go into these top 3 maps. And what they show is for March, April, May, they've got dryness here and along the Gulf Coast. But as I've told you, I think we can expand this area of green to encapsulate more of Georgia, North and South Carolina. That's March, April, May. This is, again, the models for April, May, June. See how they're now no longer as dry? They're keeping more of the dryness in the Central Plains. This would be May, June, July. See this? Stormy now. And this is June, July, August. Stormy. Dryness here. Now, as one other model to look at, let's go to the European model. This is February, March, April. You're going, all right, I see them dry there too. I understand, but I still think you can broaden this area out for late winter, early spring. Notice how March, April, May, it starts to fade. Where's the dryness? In the plains. This is now April, May, June. Dryness, greatest dryness is here. What about May, June, July? Stormier pattern, greater risk of being dry. Now, the problem is it is late winter. We're not even into fully a spring pattern. This is our worst time of year in terms of our ability to predict. So I hate to say that after building this big case for you, but this is when I'm worst at my job, in spring. We have yet to see how the atmosphere wants to overturn. So between now and next video at the end of March, we will have answers to these questions. And so I want you to pay close attention to this as we go forward. All right, to finish this up, there's an interesting thing happening in South America. Let me take you back and show you this animation. This is precipitable water. Now, the first crop of soybeans started coming out late, but they've caught up. The second crop of corn, going in fine. It's only delayed a little bit. But what's interesting is where all of the highest moisture content air is currently being pushed as higher pressure noses into this region. That's a region that over the last month has been getting drier. Now, the little bit of dryness you see in here doesn't matter. And the drought that we were experiencing in Paraguay and northern Argentina lately has been getting knocked out by much bigger storms. Like, look at these huge storms that just went through this weekend into parts of Argentina. What I'm curious about is how long does this pattern last? Because from now through March 11th, the forecast models are much drier in Tocantins, Goiás, Sao Paulo, Minas Gerais, and then down here, or up here, in Bahia. Wetter Para into Mato Grosso and wetter into Argentina. But if this continues to stay dry, that's going to be a really strong signal that we could eat into the potential for this safrinha crop. And that's corn, talking corn, okay? Right now, the models keep it dry there through much of March. And that is something we have to watch. Now, what I'm curious about is, do we fill this back in late March for the same reasons I told you that you might be colder in late March in the southeast? But if that fills in, by the end of April, does it dry back out again? And that would be during pollination. That would be during grain fill. And that could be critical for the safrinha crop. Once again, if I really had a strong indication that we could hit this safrinha crop hard, man, I'd be hard into the corn markets, and I'm not in them at all. Just understand that, at all. But I want you to know that I think this is something we have to consider and talk about. Now, between our updates, please, please, please visit AgWeather. This is where I'm going to be putting content all the time. You can go look at it. We save these longer, in-depth things once a month for all of you. But if you want to come in here and see the maps, they're all here any day you want. And it is because of partnerships like I have with Ag South and Ag Carolina that I can afford to run a website like this. So please take advantage of it. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much. We'll talk again next month.